meeting point on Delta Television. My name is IKEOGWU. My co-host, AIWERIOGENE OKUNGBOWA. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the topic, Road to 2023 General Elections. And we're having in the studio a media guru, a human rights defender, and the executive director, International Press Center, IPC Lagos, Mr. Lanre Arogundade. Lanre, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on this very important show.
On the lighter note, why are you in Delta State?
Well, we're here to have some roundtable with journalists in Delta State. We're trying to look at how we can address the issues of our safety, our security, because of recent developments when journalists run into problems while trying to do their legitimate duty, even during those occasions when they are supposed to be recognized as frontline workers. So we think that there are some things that are missing, but we first want to talk to ourselves how we can be more professional in our work, and then talk to the authorities on how they should protect journalists when they are on their legitimate duty. So that's why we're here, and we're having this workshop for a 2-day period.
Well, before we go into the topic for the day discussion, as a media practitioner who has been on ground for so many decades, how would you describe the role of
3 decades?
No, so many decades. You have practiced more than 3 decades.
Well, about 3 decades.
So how would you describe the role of the media practitioners as far as democracy is concerned?
Well, I think our role is defined for us by the Constitution, fortunately. The 1999 Constitution in Section 22 says that the media should monitor governance and hold government accountable to the people. So which means that as journalists, as media institutions, we need to do everything possible to make our democracy accountable, to ensure that we are able to serve as a tribune of the people. Because one thing is to have the elected leaders, another thing is for them to constantly respond to the yearnings and aspirations of the people. And this is where we come in as media, because we are the channels of communication between those who are governing and those that are being governed, in terms of articulating the various issues that affect them in such a way that our governments can follow up. So these days we talk about solution-driven journalism. That is, journalism that helps to bring solutions to particular problems of the people. That is a major responsibility that we have. I think the other role really, because when we say that the media should serve as the societal watchdog, it also means that we need to serve as watchdog over institutions of governance to ensure that they live according to their mandate. These are very, very weighty responsibilities that we as media are supposed to carry out, because we have a stake in democracy. When we were under the military, we were one of the institutions that suffered the most. Many media institutions were shut down, journalists were clamped into detention, to the extent that we now joined those who were fighting against the military so that we can have democracy. Now that we have that democracy, I think the media now needs to play another vanguard role to ensure that democracy is sustainable. Part of this challenge is also that we need to contribute to the building of a peaceful society. The level of crisis in our country, the level of insecurity is very, very disturbing. And we cannot practice freely because nobody is safe. During our workshop, you recall, we were even talking about challenges of journalists now, including even being kidnapped. You could be kidnapped as a journalist. Anything can happen to you. During the NSAS protest, 2 media institutions in Lagos and 1 in Benin City were attacked by hoodlums, which means that when there is crisis, even the media itself is not safe. So part of our responsibility is to promote the cause of peace in our society. And as you know very well, we've also been talking about the need for us as journalists to be conflict sensitive, to as much as possible try to be above the conflicts, not to take sides in such a way that the conflicts will worsen. I feel that this are the major roles that we have to play.
Okay, I think we'll look into some of those issues as we progress in this episode of the Meeting Point.
Thank you.
Well, back to the topic of the day. Democracy in Nigeria, this present one will be 24 years old by 2023. What is your assessment? How would you describe democracy in Nigeria since 1999?
Well, I think it's been a mixed situation. The fact that 23 years on, we can be talking about democracy is an element of progress, in the sense that through thick or thin, we've reached a situation where, at least at the level of election cycles, we can say that we've seen some progress. In 2015, we had a new government coming into place after one particular political party had ruled for a period of time. And we have reached a situation where, if we are looking at 2023 now, you are not exactly sure where the pendulum may swing. For me, I think that is something that we can point to say that in spite of the problems that we have, at the level of government succeeding themselves, we've not had major problems. And elections also, I think, have gradually improved, because we cannot compare the election of 2015 or 2019, for example, with that of 2003, 2007, where we had post-election violence in the country. And good enough, we in the media, we've also played some role in this. The fact that we even have a new Electoral Act 2022, for me, is another measure of progress, in the sense that the Electoral Act now has given INEC much more independence than it used to have. It has also incorporated technology into the elections in the way we didn't have before. So to the extent that, and when we look at Ekiti elections, the level of success there, we can say that yes, on these levels, we're having, making some progress. We might say, however, that in terms of what we like to call, dividends of democracy, in terms of, meeting the aspirations of the people, I think we can't say that we have made as much progress as we should say, because that element of progress in that is not uniform. In some areas, in some states, you'll be able to say, well, they've done this, they've done that. But generally, I think there is a problem in terms of infrastructure. But more importantly, insecurity has now returned to become a major threat. And for me, this is what should be disturbing everybody, that insecurity now seems to be the greatest threat to our democracy. That is why when you asked me earlier about the role of the media, I was saying that, look, our role, yes, we have to monitor governance and so on, but in fact, the government has to be there for you to monitor the government. And that is why helping to build a peaceful society has become very, very paramount in terms of our functions. Because to me, this is a major threat to democracy. If you look at previous elections, there's always the element of apathy. Not many people are turning up to vote. In a situation whereby communities are destroyed and so on, it may even lead to more apathy. People might just be afraid to bless you.
Yeah.
Might just be afraid to come out to vote in an election. So that is why I feel that this issue of security needs to be addressed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arogundade. It's been 24 years, 23 years going 24.
Yeah, 23 going to 24.
And it's been we have seen some evolution in our democratic culture, and I believe that if it's a coming together of so many other subsects, and I want you to focus a little bit on the political parties. Do you think they have actually, even though we know they have not been able to deliver governance at various levels, but how do you really rate them, on a scale of 0 to 10? What do you think? Because they are actually the protagonists. They are the move. They make democracy tick, And,
well, yes, the political parties make democracy to think, but I would like to say that the institution that should actually make democracy to think is the parliament, the ones we call the National Assembly at the federal level and the houses of assembly at the state level. Because like we used to say, under military, we had the executive and the judiciary. In fact, under almost every other government, you would always have the judiciary and the executive. What we didn't have before 1999 was the legislature. So in fact, there's a way in which we can say that it is the legislature that defines democracy. Now, when we look at our legislature, I do not think that our legislature has also developed to the level that one should expect. Because we're talking of a very serious institution, an institution that performs functions that move democracy. And we can just, let me give you an example. Anytime there is a probe panel in the United States, for example, and I'm citing that example because we are practicing the presidential system, and the senators have to conduct an investigation. You see the senators, in fact, the questions they ask, you will think that they are judges. You will see that they've been well briefed, that they have they've done a lot of research. They are asking tough questions. They are going back in history. They are coming up with facts and figures. I think we need to build a robust legislature that can be doing that kind of thing. And I've not really seen that as far as the democracy is concerned. For the political parties, again, maybe if the political parties had embraced direct primaries, which is one of the options in the Electoral Act, we'll have been able to see whether we are actually having what we used to call internal democracy, or in fact whether we can even see the real members of these political parties. Because the fear really is that these political parties, we can't concretely say that, oh, this is the register of the political parties. We can't say that the members are in control. Although you may not blame those who wield influence, but don't forget that part of the issue with our politics is that you still have, godfathers who dictate. You still have that, and the rank and file tend to follow what these people say. So when you say I should assess the political parties, it's difficult, but at least they are there, and Nigerians have come to embrace party politics. That is why if you look at the election in Ekiti State, for example, more than 10 political parties fielded governorship candidates. And if you look at, by the time we're going to have presidential elections, we are likely to have more candidates than, of course, we talk more about PDP and APC, but you now have Labour Party, you have NNPP, and so on and so forth. And for the size of Nigeria, I don't think the political parties are too many. That is just the truth. The challenge that we have is the nature of our democracy, where for you to be a political party in Nigeria, you have to follow the guidelines. What are these guidelines? You must have a secretariat in Abuja. You must have secretariat in at least 2/3 of the states of the federation. Some of us will have wished that one could form a political party whose aspiration maybe is just limited, to Delta states. And we had that in the First Republic. If you recall very well, I'm sure you know that in the First Republic, as at the time the military took over in 1966, we had about 81 political associations in Nigeria. In fact, they were called political associations because some of them even represented the interest of the different nationalities. For example, the Igbira Union, the Igbira people are found in Kogi, maybe also part of Kwara State today. That political party was called the Igbira Union. They had a representative in the Federal House of Representatives in the First Republic. That was the nature of our politics, which meant that that party was formed to advance the interests of the Igbira people. We had even the Sir Akiloye, who became the chairman of the National Party of Nigeria, the Second Republic, between 79 and 83. His original political party, the First Republic, was Ibadan People's Party. Although now, if you advocate that, people will think that, we are going back to ethnicism. But what I'm saying is that it should be possible for people to form a political party. Maybe their interest is limited to their local government. So their presence should only be in the state because their interest is to fight for a particular area. However, we have to live with what we have. This is an ideal that I personally would have aspired to. But now that we have a situation where political parties have to be federal, it raises a lot of issues of membership, issues of funding, issues of resources. And that is why some of these political parties cannot run away from what we call godfatherism. There are always people who have to provide these resources.
Seed capital.
Except where you have a... But I really want to see a situation whereby our political parties encourage their members to really own the parties. When I say own, even if it is 100 naira, 500 naira, 1,000 naira, there must be membership fees. Let those who belong to these political parties show commitment, by bringing something. But we have money politics, so when people join parties now, they are looking for what they can gain instead of
how much they
can contribute, which is also a reflection of the economy. You see, in 1979, as a young person then, myself and my senior brother, we liked the Unity Party of Nigeria, which was the dominant party in the Western region, and we felt, let's join this political party. When we went to register, we were asking them how much we would contribute as members. We were just, young school leavers. But why were we able to do that? Because we were, with our school sats, we were working as laboratory attendants. We were earning salaries. The salary was so huge. After feeding, giving our parents money, we still had a lot left. So we felt like we should contribute. But the reverse is the case now. At the end of the day, I think it boils down to we the people. If we realize that it is part of our fundamental right to be owners of our political parties, to be involved in our own affairs, then we should contribute to the building of these political parties.
Actually, the reason I asked that question, to assess the political parties of their, how much they have, how much progress they have made.
Well, when you also speak of progress, I think the kind of crisis that we have in the political parties do not suggest much, progress. Because during every election, you have primaries, you have disputes. The good thing about this new electoral act now is that the primaries are being conducted way ahead of the elections itself. Otherwise, in the past, on the eve of elections, people are still going to court to say, this is the candidate, this is not the candidate, all kind of things. But I think our political parties should be more, mature.
They should grow.
They should grow.
There's a lot of bickering and
in fact, they should overcome that. There must be internal mechanisms to address all these issues. It shouldn't be that every primary cycle people move away just because I've not been elected, then I've crossed to this party, I've crossed to that other party. We need more cohesion if the political parties are supposed to play, because political parties have other role beyond elections. They are supposed to be part of civic and voter education. They are pressure groups. They are supposed to, if it's an opposition political party, they are supposed to more or less constitute what we call, in Britain they call it shadow government, or kind of shadow cabinet. Some of the work that civil society do here, political parties are supposed to be doing that their work. They are pressure groups. But it's like the orientation in this country is about election. We think that political parties exist for
just to win elections.
Just to win election. That should not be the case. They should be voices of the people when they are not in government. That is, politics aside. They should be part of, developmental efforts. You see what some of us in civil society, civil society groups working in the area of health and so on. These political parties have members in those communities. Even when it is not your party that is in government, you are supposed to be part of mobilization of the people to bring development. So the mistake that people make is that they feel that, let us, they want, failure of the government that is there. They forget that people will remember you that, you were one of those who fought for a maternity center in our community. You were one of those who did everything possible to bring roads into our community. When election time comes, people will remember that. So the orientation just has to change. I think that we need political parties that are development focused so that they can help to advance the cause of democracy. Elections are important, but that is not the only functions of political parties.
When you were speaking earlier, you made us to understand that America, where we borrow this democracy we are practicing today,
yes,
that during debate, the kind of quality arguments, question that you see on the floor is something that we need to copy. But in our own climate, it's a different ballgame. It appears that when an issue comes up, sentiment will first of all overshadow the members of the House. Those who belong to the party that is, maybe the person that is being questioned, they will tend to, defend such individual, no matter what, how, and the offense is. How do you see our selection process? That is the process of selecting those who represent us at the various levels. Now that we are going to 2020 election, I know the primaries have gone, but how do you assess our selection process in Nigeria?
Well, you see, the selection process that we have seen now has not really involved the majority in the political parties, because, like I said, they opted for what is convenient for them, indirect, primaries. Of course, I don't think we have had much cases of, consensus. So to that extent, we can't say that majority of the party members, especially at the grassroots, were involved. And that would have been good for us, because when political parties are doing their primaries, in the US, for example, you will think that it is the real election that is coming up, because the candidates are going out there to address members in large numbers, not just selected delegates alone. And that is one of the beauty of democracy, so that from the trend of campaigns during the primaries in the political parties, you can then begin to project to what may happen in the elections itself. It's one area that we need to pay attention to when we're talking about how much progress that we are making. So if you ask me about the selection process, at the end of the day, I think the outcomes were somehow predictable, because you had an idea that the contest had been narrowed to 1, 2, or 3 people. So by the time they started emerging, at least from the bigger political parties, it didn't come as a surprise. Even somebody who moved from one political party to another became the presidential candidate, within a few. So all this for me just shows that our political parties have not developed. That level of sophistication is still not there. And it boils down to what I was saying before. To what extent can we say that the rank and file members of the political parties are there? In fact, our people sometimes don't see the difference. So when you see some party functions, sometimes the faces you see here is sometimes the faces that you see there. That ideological difference is not there, that somebody will say that, oh, I belong to this party. And for generations, you say that is where that is the political family, that is where they belong. We need to see elements of that, which we do not, see now. So it's a mixed situation where you're asking me, the political parties, the process of, selection and so on. And that is why after the primaries, there are still complaints. There are still, problems here and there. The legislators that are not going back, they are not happy. They feel that many of them, should have been returned. And it's creating new alliances. We are now having different, cross-carpeting and so on and so forth. What should concern us as media, for example, will be what is the interest of the people in all this? What is the public interest? Because sometimes what politicians present as the people's interest is their own personal interest. And we need to pay close attention to what is really, happening. And one can only hope that things would, get better. I was listening to Festus Okoye, the INEC Commissioner for Information, a few days ago. Or no, I think it was Mike Igini. Mike Igini is the resident, INEC resident rep for Cross River State.
Cross River, yeah.
And so they were talking about all these problems. And he said that people had forgotten that the responsibility for organizing primaries belong to the political parties. INEC is just there to observe and monitor. When they've done all that, it is the parties that will say these are our candidates. Because we have situations where they conduct primaries. Sometimes it's not the winner whose name is taken to INEC, because by the constitution it is the national body of the political parties that are supposed to do that. So one of the appeals that we should make in a program like this, in terms of looking at the role of political parties, is to say that, look, as much as possible, let the will of the people prevail. In fact, not as much as possible, at all times. Once this process is transparent, is democratic and elections are held, even if it is not the favored candidate of the party chairman or whatever that emerges, allow those candidates submit their names, to INEC. Because he was showing the example of a situation whereby they had primaries. Somebody who scored 1,000 and something, they removed the one from the from the votes. And then another person didn't score up to maybe 100. They took the one from that person and added it to that one, and that one become 1,000, and something. So we must embrace politics of a fair play, realizing that these things don't last forever. After all, we are talking of 2023. You begin to wonder. It's like only yesterday that we came here, I remember, before the last elections, when we were discussing the 2019 elections, and suddenly now we're confronted with another election. So this is just 4 years. So politicians must also know that when people are elected, they are not elected forever. It's for a 4-year period. And 4 years is a short period in a lifetime.
Okay, Lanre,
that our politics should not be do or die.
I think we have to open up the line now so that our viewer can make contribution. The topic is 2020 road to 2023 general elections, and our guest in the studio is Mr. Lanre Arogundade. He is the Executive Director, International Press Center, Lagos. And the number to call for your contribution is 0812-106-9621. 0812-106-9621. And the other number is 0807-843-4277. The number is on your screen there. You can call now to make your contribution while we continue to...
Mr. Arogundade, I was while you spoke, my mind skipped over a lot of things you mentioned. One salient fact you spoke about was the fact that the method of selecting leaders, that if it had been direct primaries, which we tried sometime, option A that has option A4.
Option A4, okay.
And all of all that. Now, I just wonder the role of civil society groups, because I know also that if the civil society groups were much more robust, if they engaged the legislature, lobbying, they probably would be able to probably force their hands into the directions Nigerians actually yearn for. Now, what do you think should be the role of groups like that?
Well, civil society groups perform a kind of oversight function. They are pressure groups. They are supposed to, because that's why they call civil society. They are part of the society. They are part of, they are non-state actors. They work in different areas, and they know what interests of the people are in the area of education, in the area of development, and so on. During the election period, they do a lot of work. They do voter education. They do civic education. They enlighten, the people. And sometimes they carry these issues to the legislature, where there are laws, there are bills in the National Assembly or in the State House of Assembly that they feel that if passed would advance the interests of the people. And I feel that because when you look at the Electoral Act, the civil society played a prominent role in ensuring that some of those provisions were incorporated, particularly electronic transmission of results. However, there is a limit to what the civil society can do, because you can do all the lobbying, you can do all the advocacy, you can do all the campaigns, you can visit and do all that. At the end of the day, it is still the legislators that will take a decision, that will vote, that would, read through the bill clause by clause, take a decision on what to include and what not to include. And that is why even this electoral act that we're saying, it's a very good document, there are still areas of concern there, even the ones that concern us, in the media. So for me, what the civil society needs to, what we can say the civil society should do is that they should be alert to their responsibilities. They should know that the journey for democracy is a long one. And that means that we must always be ready to go back to the National Assembly to seek amendment to laws that we feel have one form of deficiency or the other, so that the cause of democracy can be advanced. Now, the civil society cannot do it alone. We need the civil society itself needs the support of the rest of the society, the professional groups and so, because we should all understand that Nigeria belongs to all of us. We should have a stake. Because we have this attitude, people say, oh, what are you media doing? What is civil society doing? What are people on their own also doing? What are you doing, the professionals? We all have contributions, to make. I feel that, but one thing I've noticed about the civil society, of which we are also part in one sense, is the fact that we tend not to really move very close to the people, especially people at the grassroots, where the majority of people live, to understand what their issues are. We tend to focus maybe more on the middle class, the elite, and so forgetting that majority of our people live in the. So when we say we are doing civic and voter education, for example, yes, rightly we do it on television, we do it on radio, we use the conventional media, we use the social media. But how about majority of our people in the communities who would probably believe more the town crier? So part of what civil society should do is that we need to combine modern technologies with traditional means of communicating with the people, so that the people themselves can understand what is going on. But back to your question, civil society in Nigeria, I think they are trying, but again the legislature must be carried along. Remember when we started Freedom of Information Act, we had thought that this bill will be passed within a very short period of time. At the end of the day, we spent 12 years. Maybe what civil society also needs to do is that we also should need to realize that.
Now, let's see if
we need the executive.
We can get this.
Okay.
Hello, your name and location, please.
My name is Peter. I'm calling from Manchester.
Peter?
Yes.
Go ahead and make your contribution.
Yes, we are still talking below the 2023 general election. And I heard something that attracted my attention to call. That what are those politicians doing? What are they bringing out that will benefit the masses or the people that want to put them into power? Well, we have worked for so many years now, and we are not being able to respect those people to take us to. Are you understanding me?
Yeah, go ahead.
We have worked for some time now, but we're not still where we are. Why? Most of us are tired of all those things. And the same people that have lead us people that are still coming up again to lead us with this. What is this? I don't just understand what we have no ability to go to vote again. But this time, we're going to vote for the person who is ready. And every Nigerian will tell you who is ready to change his country. And I'm telling you now, I know, and every Nigerian knows who's going to change this country. And we're going to make a great change to this country this time around. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I think it's good for all of us to exercise our democratic rights, our civic rights, and I'm happy that you are saying that you are going to vote in that election. Part of what we have been saying in civil society is that we're in a democracy. The only way by which you can have the government that you want is for you to register, collect your PVC, and ensure that you go out, to vote. So what you are saying, it is right. We have not reached the level where we want. 23 years on, we want to see a much more prosperous country. We want to see, the people happier. But we, the people, also have a responsibility. And that is why we've been part of that campaign that just go and obtain your PVC. But it's also not about voting alone. The role of the civil society and we, the people, does not stop at voting. After we have voted, we all have to remind those that we have voted into office. You might say, oh, why should we remind them? After all, they are the ones who come to ask for our votes. Yeah, we have to. You see, politicians want votes, whether you like it or not. Anybody who wants to become governor of this state, for example, or the president, when they are going around the communities, people will ask you, what are you going to do for us? The tendency is for them to want to promise one thing or the other. And sometimes the promises are just to ensure that they win. Now we have a duty to keep those promises. That when they come into office and go back to them and say, you promised us in this community that you provide this, you have not provided it. That is why I was talking about political parties not just thinking that their role is election. This is where we all now have to come together and say, oh, you promise this thing, it must be fulfilled. When they are doing budget, we should mobilize ourselves, go to the State House of Assembly, talk to the legislators and say, look, in our community, we are supposed, to have these amenities which they promise us. Join us to struggle to have those amenities. So these are ways by which we can have accountable democracy and accountable governance in our society.
I think that will bring me now to the next question I want to ask you. The electorate sometimes don't know their role in election process. That sometimes all of them wait for, particularly those in the rural communities, wait until the election. They will just come vote and go home. It ends there. Can you help enlighten our viewer? What should be the role of the electorates before, during, and after election?
Well, before the election, I think the electorate should join the media and the civil society in asking questions from those who want to rule them. What are you going to do for us? As a matter of fact, I would expect our people in different communities come together. We are talking of non-partisan approach now. Look at your area and say, oh, what are the problems that we have? Maybe your problem is about 3 or 4. Agree among yourselves that, look, prioritize those issues and say, these are 1, 2, 3. When any of the candidates come or the political parties come, put your demands to them and say, in this our community, this is our own charter of demand or development. This is what we want from you. That is before. During the election, go out and vote for a party of your choice in a peaceful manner. Contribute to peaceful elections. Don't be part of violence. Don't allow anybody to give you ammunition or arms to go and destroy it. That is not your role. Your role is to vote and be civic. After the elections, you've now elected these people. The people that have been elected are accountable to you as a people. At any level, it could be local government or whatever, all of them, there are offices. Those of them in the National Assembly, they have constituency offices and so on. Organize yourselves and follow up on those issues that concern you. Ask them questions. Even when it's not about development, you have the right to know what they are doing. If somebody from your constituency is in the House of Assembly, create time to have audiences with them. Organize town hall meetings. Invite them. We just want to know what you are doing, in the House of Assembly. We want to know how far you have helped us to push certain issues. That way, those that we elect will know that the people are watching them. But once election is over and everybody retires into their respective homes, waiting for the next election, we are not going to help the cause of democracy. So there are things that we can do. Everything is not about money. If a community organizes itself and sends a message to the person in the House of Reps that, oh, we, these 3, 4, 5 communities would like to meet with you, that person will know that, oh, these people are very, very serious. I think, and it will take them seriously. To say, oh, all of us, we have come together across religious groups, across age groups, across professions, to say that we just want to have a forum with you. These are the kind of things that would encourage our people to do. The more we do that, the more the politicians will respect the people and begin to act according to their wishes.
Yeah, so, Mr. Arogundade, I was just, when you, on this issue of the electorate, how much they engage their leaders.
Their leaders, the elected leaders.
Yes, it appears there's this huge gulf.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think? Because you talked about people mobilizing and pushing through certain demands. Now, how can Nigerians actually fully participate? Because there's so much apathy. I do not know what's responsible for that. Because this is novel. If we could engage our leaders on this level, Nigeria will change in a jiffy. What do you think is responsible for this?
Before you answer, speak to that. OKUNGBOWA, you will agree with me that Nigerian politicians have made themselves a demigod. that it will become difficult that they even wait for those leaders to tell them when they should ask questions and when they should not. But with what he has said now, if we embrace it, we may begin to see the need to, gather and ask them questions, knowing that it's our responsibility to question them and hold them accountable for the promises they made during their campaign.
What is responsible for
So,
this apathy? How come we
Apathy, we have many factors responsible for apathy.
Are you talking apathy voting?
Yes.
No,
in apathy, in participation, in governance.
That's correct, yeah.
Well, I think our people participate in governance one way or the other. It's just that,
but not in this direct manner.
It's not coordinated. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
When you don't have electricity in your area, and maybe you protest to PHCA or NEPA, as the case may be, you are participating in governance. In fact, when you organize in your areas, in an estate, in your community, maybe the roads are bad, you tax yourselves to patch the roads, all those kind of things that we do is still part, of governance. However, what we don't have is enough engagement of duty bearers, those who are supposed. So, if, for example, we know we have councillors, how many times are people on their own decided to invite, councillors to talk to them? And in fact, you can even make use of them in a developmental way. We have schools, for example. So if you have a secondary school in your community and maybe you are having your annual whatever, you are not asking somebody to come and donate to you. You can deliberately invite a member of the House of Assembly, the senator, or everywhere. Oh, we are having our school prize giving day or whatever. Come and give a talk on. By the time that person comes, the young people who are there will use that opportunity to ask questions. So we need to return to that era. In our universities, our student unions need to begin to do what we used to do in those days. On campuses, when we invite the politicians to come and give lecture, not because we want them to come, we are not asking them to come and donate money to us. In fact, social clubs, apart from the student union, different groups, they will say, create a topic, accountability in governance, development. And then I remember during my period at the University of Ife, in the early 1980s up to the mid 1980s, we had different governors coming to deliver lecture on campus, brought by different groups from as far as Kano. I remember that time Governor Rimi came, Jakonde came, Jim Nwobodo came from the southeast then to come and deliver a lecture. And when they come like that, it's an opportunity for students to ask them questions, because they will have followed developments. So they are putting questions, to them. All our institutions can be institutions of governance. Our churches, our mosques can be institutions, of governance. There's nothing that says that you cannot invite an elected person to come and give a brief talk to your congregation on issues that affect the people. What we need to do, because you said there is a gulf, and it's true that gulf exists. We need to bridge that. One other way to bridge that is for us to also fight for inclusive governance. I think that when you look at those who are more active in the political parties when it comes to campaigns and rallies, they are women. But how many women get elected? If we have more women, that will draw more people into politics because of the role that women play. So if we create more room for women to have more positions in governance, for young people to have more positions, the not too young to run bill was passed. Despite that, how many young people are we electing? These are the key groups that connect government with the people: women, young people, people living with disability. We can't achieve everything at the same time, but I think we can take some important steps that would bring more participation of the people, in governance.
We are talking about road to 2023 general elections, and as we speak, the presidential candidates have submitted the names of their vice presidential candidates, and some are saying they are putting their names placeholder and what have you, and others are saying they will likely be Muslim tickets for the All Progressive Congress. So, Lanre, are you sure we are ready for, in this situation that we find ourselves, for Muslim candidate in Nigeria?
Well, that's an interesting one. For me, I think that we are at a situation where we can't compare today, or we can't compare 2022 with 1993, when we had the election of IKEOGWU, who chose a Muslim running mate, and in spite of that, Nigerians went and and voted for them. In fact, we can't even compare that 1993 with the period, the 80s, when we were in school. When in fact, somebody may be your friend in the university up to the time of graduation, you don't even know where that person comes from, because it was not part of our consciousness to relate with people on the basis of where do you come from. You find yourself in a room, maybe 6 people are officially allocated to the room, then you have squatters. That is why in a typical room at Ife then, you have people from those, you sense where people come from by virtue of their names, not necessarily by asking. So if we're looking at 2022, I don't think it's the same thing as 93, because unfortunately the issue of religion has become a factor in our national life, and it's creating a lot of tension. One would therefore expect political parties to show sensitivity to the feelings of the people, do everything possible that would give people a sense of belonging, that we are ready to move this nation forward. And so it will be there, because any party that does a Muslim ticket, it means they are taking a risk. Now we will be around to know whether that risk will lead to results or not. But where you have a country where a group of people feel marginalized and so on, we have to begin to address that. That is why, for example, one would have been happier if some of these political parties are even looking in the direction of women, irrespective of religion, in the choice of the deputies that they are picking. That would have been helpful. I don't know the mind of most Nigerians, because in Nigeria's politics operates in the quicksand. So what may be good for the goose may not be good for the gander. But if I were to express my own personal opinion, I would say, well, in an ideal situation, try and balance your tickets because of where we find ourselves. We are hopeful that this situation will not persist forever. We are hopeful that we will get to a stage in this country where politics will be based on merit. That is why some of us are hopeful that in the next period, let this president go around all the so-called geopolitical, so that we can face the real issues of governance, so that nobody will ever say, we never had a president. But Nigeria is also interesting, because even when particular zones have gotten it, they will begin to do arithmetic or mathematical calculation. One region has had it for 10 years, another one for 11. We have to balance the equation. At the end of the day, there are also elements of backwardness. It shows that we've not advanced beyond what we call primordial sentiment. Because truly, the fact that somebody comes from a particular religion does not mean that members of that religion will benefit from that government. Yeah. When roads are bad, it is bad for Christians and Muslims and traditionalists and everyone. So the interest of the people, and we discuss this a lot when we are discussing among ourselves as journalists, what is the interest of the people? The interest of the people is about schools that train children, functional education. The interest of the people is about, they go to the hospital, they are attended to. Doctors are available in the hospitals. When somebody is ill and goes to the hospital, he does not say that, the doctor that will treat me must be a Christian doctor or a Muslim doctor. You are looking for, succor to your problem. So when you look at it, it's when it comes into politics. And I also feel that sometimes politicians use all these things to cause, division among our people. So it's a two-way thing. Like I said, the reality of the situation today is that you cannot dismiss the factor of religion from our political life. However, the more we have, good governance, the more these issues will begin to recede, so that we can act, collectively. So even if at the end of the day you elect a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, people must also know that you have a responsibility to follow up on that government. Otherwise, the fact that you have elected somebody from your religion does not mean that that person would automatically live up to your expectation.
Right. The line is still open. You can call to make your contribution. Before the primaries, OKUNGBOWA. Before the primaries, we were hearing that there may be a coming together or merger or something between parties to come up with the third force. Do you still foresee a third force coming up before 2023 election?
Well, anything can happen when it comes to Nigerian, politics. But we ought to have seen the third force before the closure before the end of the period allowed by INEC for these primaries and so on. We ought to have seen that third force. How that third force would emerge now, I don't know. It could only emerge if the third force decides to align forces with some of the. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Your name and location, please.
My name is Daniel. I'm calling from Asaba.
Go ahead, sir.
Right.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you.
Sorry, I can't hear you clearly.
We can hear you. Speak.
Is that
continue with the third force issue.
Okay, the third force issue. I was saying that the third force ought to have emerged before the conclusion of the primaries. Maybe we'll have seen that third force in terms of so we have the APC, we have the PDP, now we have the Labour Party, which has come into reckoning because we've been moved to that political party. Then we have the NNPP, that party. So that third force should have come in form of a party that would pose some visible threats to either APC or PDP. But we didn't see that. The only thing that can happen now is we can have realignment of forces, because that is something that has become the common feature of Nigerian politics. Remember in 2015, the PDP that had been in power suddenly became weakened because many of their big guns started moving into APC, and then before you knew it, APC had become a force. And so when such trends happen, instead of having a third force, some of these political parties could even become greater force than they are currently, depending on how events shape. And it will seem as if maybe there is some trend towards that. Because look at National Assembly, we have some senators defecting to the extent that the chairman of the APC had to go to the National Assembly to meet with their caucus. The president met with them. The realignment of forces is what we are likely to have as against a third force. But it also depends on how the people define the third force. People feel that they will go in the direction of these other parties, apart from APC or PDP, may think that is their own third force. But within those parties too, like I said, you may have realignment of forces that even before you know it, the party that is in opposition will suddenly become stronger than the party in government. Nothing can be ruled out in Nigerian politics. At least whatever we might say of Nigerian politics is in a sense, it's a very, very, it could be very dynamic sometimes, it could be very interesting. And it's because of our own characteristics, because in other places, people won't say because of having lost out, they are moving from one party to, so people move up to 3 parties within an election, cycle. So let's see how events unfold to know whether we will see how it. I don't know whether I've really answered your question, whether I've done but
it's a matter of semantics. Whether there is an realignment of forces.
Exactly.
So another force may likely emerge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So one of these existing parties, ruling parties, may become greater force than they have. So it will depend on so many factors. And don't forget that we're in June. Election itself is about 8 months away. In February, it's still a long time for many things to happen.
What do you think about
Because even you're asking me about possible Muslim ticket and so on. Don't forget that apart from the PDP, which has the governor of this state as the vice presidential candidate, the other parties have not really decided on their. Even though INEC says, well, according to their rules and regulations, there is no provision for placeholder, but presidential candidates contest with their vice presidential candidates, and they can always go to INEC to say, based on whatever, this is my own candidate. So it's still not settled, because even at the level of vice presidential candidates, most of the other parties have not come up with a final say to say this is our candidate. That's why I said a lot can still change before we have the elections.
Okay. The fact that there seems to be so much uncertainty, I mean, does it not show to Nigerians that there's a need for the parties to be up and doing and show a little bit of maturity? Because you had all of when election, the timetable were rolled out, and as we speak, there's still so much
no,
difficulty.
I agree with you. I think a serious political party should not wait indefinitely to have a advice. That these are decisions that should come
straight away,
almost immediately, so that the people know where they are going.
They're headed,
Rather than all these things. Somebody say placeholder. Another nomenclature which we didn't have before. We suddenly were having
back in
the placeholder. We have a way of bringing out some strange lexicons, vocabulary.
But Mr. Arogundade, what do you think about because from what we have seen, it appears a lot of people are dissatisfied with, they are unhappy with the performance of both parties. They tried both sides, and it appears there's a movement. There's this groundswell of people saying we're just fed up. Is it tied to the fact that social media has become such a powerful weapon in the hands of Nigeria? Is that one fueling this movement on social media? I think even outside in the...
Well, I think what social media has done is to give people avenue to voice their opinion about what they feel. And that's why the kind of movement that you have, we see a lot of social media campaign using all kind of things to say, oh, this is where we're going, we are dissatisfied. At the end of the day, I think democracy is better for it. Because if either of the two parties that are ruling us still retains or come to power, they will now realize that the people cannot be taken for granted. Because that in itself can propel better governance, because they now know that it is not everybody that necessarily agrees that we can only have two pathways, that in fact we can have the alternative. And if it would also encourage more people to come out to vote, I also think it's better, because remember you talked about apathy. So the way things are going now, we may have more people voting in 2023 than we had in 2015 and 2019. If that happens, irrespective of how it happens, I think it's something that we need to celebrate. There is what we usually call the law of unintended consequences. You are doing something because you are pursuing a particular cause, not knowing that that thing you are doing would have greater ramifications. So one consequence, perhaps unintended, that we may have about this movement that you are talking about is the fact that it may increase popular participation in the 2023 elections, irrespective of what the outcome would be. It's bringing a new layer into the political arena, and we should welcome that without any form of prejudice.
Okay.
So for me, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And like I said, if people are saying we're not happy with the way you've managed your affairs, it's still a positive development. At least people are speaking out. The politicians will now know that people cannot be taken for granted, that there may be one form of revolt or the other. And in fact, these ongoing revolts, you will see that by the time the campaign starts, the language will change. Remember in the Second Republic, as at 1979 when they came in, the Unity Party of Nigeria at that time was talking about free education, free education. By along the line, the ruling party at the center, the National Party, now realized that look, they cannot run away from the issue of education. They started talking about qualitative education. One way or the other, education became an issue. So I think that what we're having now is going to have some, I don't want to say radical effect, but I think it's going to have significant effect on our political process.
From what has happened since the primaries were concluded, it appears that Nigerian political parties does not have ideologies. That is why somebody can jump from 3 political parties within an electional process period, and at the end of
maybe
the day,
ideology is that of jumping.
and at the end of the day, the person gets the ticket of that party. You understand? So, what should Nigerians look out for as campaign starts in September?
Nigerians should look out for their interests. We said it earlier. Decide what you want. What are your own priority issues? What do you want government that comes into power in 2023 to start tackling? Everybody, we in the media, professional groups, lecturers in the university, farmers, every interest group must decide on their own priority now. And when the campaign comes, let them have that priority. Anywhere they're having political debates, go there and say, oh, we are speaking for farmers. Could be farmers in the south, could be farmers in the southeast, could be farmers in this state. Our major challenge is the fact that our farmlands are not safe. We want to know your agenda to make things safer for us. We must all define our agenda and table this agenda before the politicians. That is what we have to do.
But I know that it is easier said than done, but I just wondered how that would come to be, because there's a need for these groups, professional groups, farmers groups, all of them to truly work together and to push that agenda.
Yes.
But my real question is this. I know INEC in the last 2 elections, Anambra and Ekiti, they appear to have done well. People have actually given them credit, and up to the
I like your language. They appear to have done well.
Up to the extent that even the man who lost in Ekiti isn't actually worrying. His gripe isn't about the process.
It's about what?
Vote trading.
That is what he's going
to court for.
Yes,
not because
right.
The process was not transparent or something.
Sure.
I wonder how much how much negative impact it will have on the process.
Well, for me, it's a major setback for our political process. That at a time when we are celebrating the use of technology in elections, some politicians have found a way of bypassing technology to, they do it cleverly. I saw kind of photographs of Ekiti where once you vote, there's a way you show somebody is noticed, and then, in fact, cash was being given. And that is why one of the things we're advocating for at the level of the civil society is the fact that we should have an electoral offences commission. You see, INEC is saddled with too much responsibility. Conduct elections, conduct voter education. In fact, voter education itself should be taken away from INEC. National Orientation Agency, that should be their sole mandate to conduct voter education for the people. When we have an electoral offences commission, that commission will operate like the EFCC, like the ICPC. They will have their own intelligence officers, their own policemen, so that anybody that they see engaging in this fight, they will apprehend and then prosecute. Because there is no way the INEC official who is manning the BVAS machine, conducting election, would pay out, even if they are giving the money out in its process. It is not his duty to leave the polling unit and go and apprehend those people. So one way forward is for us to have the the electoral offences commission. But even when you have that commission, after all, the EFCC or the ICPC have not stopped people from engaging in acts of corruption. It will only serve as a deterrent. I don't know for how long we need to educate the people that the money you collect to vote for people does not really help you. Even in Ekiti, perhaps the highest amount of money that was given was 7,000 naira. What can 7,000 naira do in today's Nigeria? It cannot fill the tank of a car when it comes to petrol. We know how much we are buying fuel. If you are from a family of 5, I don't know, maybe bread is cheaper in because you all look more like yourself now. But a loaf of bread in Lagos, the biggest loaf now goes for about 800 naira to 1,000 naira.
Same here.
And if you are talking of a family of 4 or 5, at least that cannot last more than 1 meal. In some cases, it cannot even feed the family. So we are saying, so that means that 7,000 naira, if you want to break it down, we buy you 7 loaves of bread. I mean, how does that solve your problem as an individual?
For 4 years.
We're talking of a 4-year period.
Even for a 30-day
So
period.
it's just stupidity, and I hope we can get to that level where people will do what they did in Ghana recently, when some politicians went to the community and they protested. They said, that is not what we need. They rejected the food item they brought. They rejected everything. Let us, if democracy will work, it would have to start with the people. I used to say that our problem is 60% government, 40% people. But I've been challenged by some of my friends. No, my friend, you don't know what you are saying. The problem is 70% the people, 30% the government. Well, let's say it's even 50-50. But you see, if we, the people, take ourselves much more seriously, those in power will take us much more seriously.
But it has been entrenched in our democracy.
It's not entrenched in our democracy. I think, I don't know, I think what we can say is that it's been entrenched in our party politics.
the party politics.
When you say it's entrenched in our democracy, that means you are saying that maybe it has become, there is no law in our democracy that says that should be the practice. So that's why I'm just saying that. It's true.
It has been illegally entrenched.
Exactly, yeah.
You understand that democracy, because even the party people, when they are planning, they are planning how to carry money to those grassroots people, and when they come, it is expected that they will even ask, what did you bring for us? You understand? So the reorientation must be something that all of us take seriously.
It's not just politicians alone. Somebody becomes a star in a community, maybe it's a musician, he goes to the community, he's throwing money, and you see people scampering. I feel that poverty has kind of affected the mental state of our people, that people don't even think logically. That's why I'm saying that, look, you are giving 7,000. That 7,000 can only buy 7 loaves of bread. It won't even last you 1 month. So where do you go from there?
But
It's very unfortunate.
The vote buying, vote trading, as we saw in Ekiti. But going forward, it appears INEC has done well, because now the focus isn't so much on them, because they have
Delivered on
so many instances.
Some credible election.
Yeah. But now, how do you think Nigerians rate INEC? Is there any confidence? Do Nigerians repose any confidence in INEC and believe that they will?
Yeah, I think INEC is gaining more
acceptance,
positive image among the people. From comments after the Ekiti election, people are believing that INEC can after all deliver on a credible election. So what we pray for is that, in fact, when it comes to Osun election, which is the next off-cycle election, INEC would improve on what they did in Ekiti, because now that they are earning the public trust, they need to ensure that trust is sustained, because that in itself is an element in the delivery of credible elections. But we need to also appeal to other institutions that have role to play in elections. The security of election, for example, is not an INEC affair. It's the security agencies that look at problems of security done in elections where you could have a lot of trouble and move in there. That they also need to play their role. We've talked about this issue of vote buying. Let's do everything possible to have an electoral offences commission that commission would even apprehend those who disturb elections, because up to now, you see how people trying to snatch ballot boxes and so on and so forth. So if all other institutions of governance play their role, I'm sure INEC will do much, much better.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lanre Arogundade, the Executive Director, International Press Center, Lagos, for joining us in today's episode. You have done really a great job for us.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
My co-host, AIWERIOGENE OKUNGBOWA, I also want to thank you for being there. Our viewer will also, without you, won't be here. Just join us same time tomorrow. My name is IKEOGWU. Have a wonderful evening.